You are. Good evening. It is 7 o'clock, and I'll call the meeting to order. Confirm that we do have quorum. At this time, I will ask if there are any statements of disclosure of financial interest for community services and committee meeting. And next we have a delegation. Welcome.
Thank you. This work? Yeah. Oh, thank you for having me. I was told by my assistant to show up here at 7 o'clock, so I just found out today. I haven't really prepared any kind of speech, or you weren't expecting any eloquent anything. My name is Sujata Ganguly. I'm the new COO over at the health authority here. I come from Toronto, actually. I've only been in the Northwest Territories since the beginning of January, so I came just at the perfect time to get a true flavor of the North. Although I did grow up in Thunder Bay, so I had some distant memories of the really cold weather. I've been working in community and health services for about 30 years. My background is sciences. I did a master's in nutrition, and I'm also currently doing an MBA at the Rotman School in health and life sciences. So I don't know what else I can tell you about myself. I mean, I've run a few organizations. This is somewhat different from what I'm used to. Different environment for sure. Different population. I mean, we're trying to wrap my head around the difference in scale. So in Toronto, I worked in a relatively small geographic area, but within a few city blocks, there would have been probably about 400,000 people. So this is like the polar opposite of that type of environment. So different sets of challenges, but when I go to work every day, it's the challenges are actually very similar in many ways also. Certainly a great group of people at the health center. They've been wonderful. I've been there for 2 weeks now, and they've been nothing but helpful. I still have a lot to learn, and if you have questions for me, I can't say I have any answers, but I would say, ask me your questions, and I'll go away and ask someone else and tell you.
Thank you. Great, go ahead.
Any questions for me, or?
Thank you for your introduction. Thank you for coming this evening. We appreciate you coming to our community, and we welcome you. Are there any questions or comments from council? Councillor Westwell?
Firstly, thanks for joining us. And welcome to Fort Smith.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if in Toronto they summoned you to a council meeting just to say hi, but
no, I can't say that they did. No.
So yeah, welcome to Smith. I guess as you'll discover more and more as we're a small community that tends to get well into the weeds on issues and things. So I guess one of the reasons why we wanted to say hi and welcome to the community, and hopefully maybe give you an idea of what community councilors are hoping in the future to get updates or advancements on. And I know that staffing and vacancies at the health center is one of the ones that's always at the front of our mind. I think that's kind of what you're hoping to make sure we could just put on your burner as something we're hoping to see addressed.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I mean, one of the big challenges is housing. And when I took this job, I had no idea how difficult the housing situation was here for finding rentals. I actually bought a place because I didn't see any other options. I'm actually probably almost a taxpayer now. I haven't actually paid any taxes, but.
We'll sort that out, I'm sure. But thank you for joining us as well and coming. It's a pleasure to have a new administrator come meet council so quickly in the community.
Thank you. Councillor Cox?
I'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Westfield said. So welcome and thank you for coming. And I think the intent of our invitation so soon into your I guess posting is to open that channel of communication and the dialogue so that we can have conversations about the issues that council.
Absolutely, and I'm happy to come back when I actually know something and I can pass that on.
Councillor Couvette?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be quite blunt. I was the one that sort of brought the invitation along. It was sort of a result of a situation that happened over Christmas to a very good friend of mine. Ended up in a facility, and there were some concerns about just the quality of some of the services. And it was more specifically to blood sampling and things like that. Historically, over the last few years, I think as a community, there's a general perception out there that the level of service at the health center is being decreased. Services are being centralized to either Hay River and Yellowknife to the detriment of the healthcare of our residents. But it's really high on our priority list to try and address them. That's issues we should actually have, rather than yourself sitting there, the Minister of Health should be sitting there right now. But I felt it would be beneficial for us to open communications with the person responsible for the day-to-day delivery of services in the community.
Yes, absolutely.
And I do welcome you to the community, and I'm very pleased that you accepted our invitation to delegate.
I am certainly aware of the move towards the centralization of services. As you know, there was a restructure in 2016, and you know, bit by bit, that centralization has started to happen. Now, it was never intended to be at the detriment of any services that are available here. So if that is either perception or reality, it's something that we need to address. So I mean, I'm always willing to hear what people have to say and you know, take it away and see what I can find out.
Deputy Mayor Smith?
So I do just want to welcome you to the community. I promise you the -20 feels much better after about a -40.
Yeah, I have no car, so I'm walking everywhere. I'm feeling it.
It's great to hear that you purchased a house in the community. This council's actually done a lot of work through the Sustainable Development Advisory Board, looking at affordable housing and the rental market, and it's I won't go into details, but we're in a bit of a catch-22. You know, you need developers to build housing, to rent, and you're absolutely right. It's easier to purchase a house here than it is to rent. I'm glad that didn't discourage you from coming here. Speaking briefly to what Councillor Couvette was talking about, there definitely is a perception within the community that there's less services. You can only do dialysis here. You seem to be going to Hay River for routine appointments that you used to be able to do in the health center. I think it's part of a larger picture of decentralization that this community council struggles with on a number of levels, the lack of a local health board, etc. So it's not specific to health and social services. The same thing is happening in a variety of other GNWT portfolios. And as community councillors, we're the kind of the front lines, we're the people that see residents every day, so that's what we hear about all the time. And it's increasingly difficult to get the feedback back to health and social services because there is no local health board. which means that everything's going to flow through Yellowknife, and that's what communication kind of breaks down. So I don't want to go into in detail. You have an excellent group of staff at the health center. Fort Smith has pioneered some amazing things, including the midwifery program, of which some of my children were born here in the community. There's a track record of real excellence there, and you've got some really excellent staff. You've got a very good team that you get to inherit, I guess. So I'm really happy that you're here. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you for coming. And thank you for being willing to listen to us.
Absolutely. And my door is always open. So if something comes up, I should have brought business cards, but you know where to find me. Yeah.
Mr. Morrison?
Thank you. I'll just speak quickly from sort of the administrative side. The less well-dressed folks sitting on this side of the room, we're the administrators as opposed to counselors. So yeah, we actually work with you in the provincial service. We run the volunteer ambulance department. So we will interface with your facility at that point. We also have an economic development position here and take our mandate of economic development very seriously with the concept of sort of a restriction or centralization of government. Of course, we have to find other economic opportunities in our community. At the same time, with our economic development mandate, any loss of employment is, of course, very noticeable to us, has been stated. And then finally, ultimately, as an employer, we have with volunteer fire, volunteer animal shelter, volunteer ambulance service, and then actual employees, upwards of 140 staff. And while, services may stay the same for residents, it's circling the health center and giving that service in the afternoon. If they have to do medical travel to Yellowknife for that service and lose 3 days, that's 3 days of lost time for me as an employer, right? In a unionized environment, that's 3 times that I'm giving away. So it's a direct transfer of dollars from me as an employer to the GMWT benefiting from the centralization of services. So, there's things that can actually be quantified with this move to centralized services that actually is sort of the employer, one of the largest employers in the community.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's also a bit of a catch-22. So we have, as you mentioned, Councillor Smith, so many vacant positions right now. And attracting people who have the skills necessary to run a good health center is, I've only been here 2 weeks. I look at the vacancy rates and the history of turnover in terms of those skilled positions. And it makes it very difficult to provide good services when you don't have the people to run those services. So
Mr. Morrison?
Thank you. We hear you. As one of the counselors said, we put a lot of attention into housing, and that might be a great place for us to come together is further examining that issue. How can we help you with the housing aspect so you can more successfully staff? I think we understand the concept of community wellness in general, whether it's affordable housing. We as a town have just started a municipally run daycare because we acknowledge the lack of child care services was a detriment to employment. And so I think you find a willing partner moving forward on issues like this.
one of the ideas I was percolating, not that I can actually pull it off, is to have a small child care center at the health center.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments by council? I think that my concerns have been pretty much brought up by the other councils, the deputy mayor and by administration. Certainly we've heard very loud and clear from the community that lab services are critically important, and that it's one of the things that we would like to have addressed, I think sooner rather than later. I really appreciate you coming and meeting with council tonight and welcome you to the community. I'm very glad to hear that you did buy a house, and we know that there are issues with housing and with rentals in particular, and I don't know how much we can do, but it's certainly something that we try to address and try to work with developers and that issue.
No easy answers.
Yeah. So we hope that this is the first of many meetings between yourself and myself and with council. And likewise, if there are concerns that you have, we ask you to reach out to us as well.
Absolutely.
And look forward to a great partnership with yourself and with us. And again, thank you very much for coming out this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
You are welcome to stay through the rest of the meeting, but you are not obligated.
I have a cab coming at 7:30. We're going to, yeah, just stay inside.
So we will at this time move on with our agenda, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Hubert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cox. Discussion? Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. We received a late-breaking expression of interest to serve on the Community Services Advisory Board. If council so wishes, they can add under 7A, item 2, expression of interest for Roma and Alex.
Thank you. Any further changes to the agenda? And I will just note that we did have a second delegation that is not attending this evening. So looking for Councillor Kubret and Councillor Cox, are you amenable to the changes? And looking, I guess, all in favor? Opposed? Councillor Campbell, are you in favor? Thank you, passed unanimously. The minutes of the January 12th meeting are in your package and were adopted at the council meeting of January 19th. Visions, values, and goals. Visions and values are in your meeting package. And at this time, we will go on to the director's report.
I have it easy this evening. Ms. White, if you would take the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. So we'll just have a quick look at the stats, and I can kind of let you know what's exciting. We had several rentals for the pool. That number might kind of skew in that some of those were people who had their December rental canceled while we had pool repairs done. Parents and Taps is pretty active. Getting pretty close to the numbers that we would have had in a regular time of life. So that's exciting. Drop in pickleball. I just actually saw those people the other day. There were 8 pickleballers playing, and I think a couple of people waiting for a turn. So seniors pickleball is great. We don't have it as seniors here, so if anybody's free in the afternoons and they want to play pickleball, watch out for the seniors. They are awesome. Youth nights, the older age group, I think we talked about this last month, the older age group's not really using the program effectively, so because they're coming in quite late in the evening. So we're actually gonna try and combine into 2 groups, and we're gonna play around with the times to see if we can get kids back into the facility for their youth nights. We are going to have to, this just came to me, I normally would let Mr. Morrison know, but we want to be able to offer more, but environmental health officer is putting some restrictions, so we may have to ask for a variance to the phase of the emerging wisely plan. So we're just working on that. Gym remains fairly active. Hockey and figure skating, all very good. Good use of parents and tots. Those are again probably pretty similar to our normal numbers for our parents and tots skating. After school program, pretty full. And daycare continues to grow. I think we're up to 12 regular daily users and some drop-in users. So that program continues to grow as we hoped it would. A few other comments about that part of the community services department. We're going to be looking, or we're going to be starting some new group fitness programs in the next week or two. Boot camp and Zumba. We're working on expanding some pool programming, but again, some of this is going to have to go to public health. As I said, we're going to play with the hours of youth night to try and maximize the number of youth coming in. NWT Ski Day is February 14th. And the NWT Snowboard Territorials and Big Fun, which we're supporting, is February 27th, 28th. Just to comment on that, I don't know if anybody's been out to the snowboard hill on a Sunday afternoon. No room. It's full. It's like 10 skidoos running kids up and down the hill. And we have probably 5 adult participants learning to snowboard as well. It's amazing. Yeah. And I think that at next meeting, perhaps we'll bring in a director for community services, if you like. I like. And then I can move on to the library. Second T, we're getting a few more people. That's an appointment program. Obviously, our computer usage is down. We have not been having children in the building, but we're working through some problem solving around that. The home delivery program continues to be strong. I hear from parents who use the home delivery program, and it's like Christmas every Thursday. Kids apparently stand at the window waiting for the books to come. It's very exciting. I know my kids love it, but my kids are not the only ones apparently. Continuing to do some pickup programs for family activities, STEM activities, arts activities. And then some additional things in that. We are looking and have gotten, going to be moving ahead with expanding the programming in the library. We're looking to have use time, so there will be access to computers, but there will also be some other programming in the building after school hours. There will only be 3 computers available, so normally we have 6 computers that are full the entire time. So the kids will offer some other programming for kids who are waiting. We're looking at browsing, opening up for some browsing. And all of this is just sort of right now moving furniture, clearing out as much space as we can so that we can ensure physical distancing in the building. Because that is our responsibility to ensure there's enough room for physical distancing based on the number of people we can have. We're hoping to be able to accommodate 10 people in the building at a time for browsing. So that's kind of where that's at. Yeah. That's it for community services. Oh, I missed something. I always miss something.
Wow. Stop to remind you who's in charge. Yes. By remembering something. No, this is just another kudo to her department. I think as they start coming up to full strength, one of the things we're seeing is an overlap of operations. So for example, the librarian will go and do a story time in the daycare. So now you're seeing our our arts and culture department working with our child care department, or perhaps the kids from the daycare will go swim in the pool. So you see our recreation department and our daycare department interacting. And as we evolve, you'll start to see more conjoined programming like that, so that we're not siloed in child care, physical recreation, and non-physical recreation, which is the whole intent, right, of the overall wellness approach we should take to our operation.
Thank you, Ms. White and Mr. Merson. Are there any questions or comments by council? Councilor Cox?
It's great to see the numbers are so high for pickleball, drop-in pickleball. I was curious about the walking time for seniors. It appears there's a very low uptake on that. I wasn't sure if it was the time or just wondering what happened for the month of January.
So that program was more active last year. It's not that we have a lot of users usually. We usually have 2 or 3, but they're pretty consistent on coming. And this year they're just not there. And you know, that I think it's the same time as last year. So I don't think that's necessarily the issue. I just think they're being cautious.
Supplemental, Councilor Cox. Any further questions or comments by council? Thank you for the report. It sounds like there are a lot of exciting things going on in the community, even with COVID going on. The story time, do they still have that going on online?
Yes, they do, and we're hoping to move to story time in the gym. We also have steps almost ready to go. No singing, but they will be able to socially distance in the gym, and so we'll do that. If the gym's not allowed, so if we have to find an alternative space, we may do that, but it'll be in the rec center so that people can physically distance and attend the actual story time.
Thank you. The economic development.
Sorry, I'm just running something that's in my head so I can see if I can try to remember everything without him getting into me. So yeah, economic development plan. Unfortunately, our economic development officer was away for a big chunk of January for family things, and then was isolating. Continuing to work on our winter vacation campaign with ads up here and advertising with the Northwest Territories Tourism. What does the second T stand for? Tourism. Territories Tourism, right? Thank you. We're going to be starting to have some ads on cabin radios. We just saw the script for that the other day. With Buffalo National Park is including us in their radio ad with cabin radio. So we're one of the 7 great things to do when you're coming to Wood Buffalo. I'm not sure what the other ones are. Really the only good thing to do. Then working with NWT Tourism on some stock footage, winter stock footage, and we're waiting on the interim reports, which could be coming by the end of the month from the marketing group, Catalyst. Also, kind of interesting stuff has come up is we've been contacted by our research institute to talk about makerspace opportunities and funding and getting in with the UVic makerspace group on some of the funding applications that they're applying on. So the economic development officer and the program coordinator for arts, culture, and library are going to collaborate with the research institute on that. The other one is, for the name of the funding, the Northern Food funding that came up. So there's a funding pot that's come up for some Northern Foods sustainability projects, and so we're gonna be working to try and put something in for that as well. To see if we can get some economic development opportunities out of that. We have not heard back from ITI on any of our other funding.
Thank you. Mr. Morrison?
Thank you very much. I would also add that the Economic Development Officer is involved in the second round of submissions on the climate change adaptation funding from CanNor. ITI funding that was mentioned for the, I think it's the tourism development position, which is money that will fund a portion of another position. So I think that having that extra body in our economic development department will allow us to do great things. We're talking about now a full year presence at our visitor information center, a catalyst for some packaging and inbound tourism initiatives, etc. And then, of course, we talked about some of the food security funding that's also coming from the Fed. Things we're looking at is perhaps a wild meat butchery or potentially some kind of community greenhouse similar to what Inuvik has, where they repurpose their old arena with the cheap electricity available in this community, available for heat. One would suggest as capital funds were available, it would be a slam dunk in our community. Something that just came across our table also with funding that may be available for making our recreation centers more resilient. In the face of COVID, I immediately thought IT infrastructure in the building with that funding. And so since we've been using EDO sort of as a pencil for many of our funding applications, you may be involved in that as well.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments by council? Thank you for the report. Again, some excellent opportunities coming available for the community and a lot of hard work done by the EGO. Next, we will move on to the advisory board reports. There's the Community Services Advisory Board meeting from January 12th. Councillor Cox.
Thank you again to the Executive Assistant Katie for the thorough minutes. I won't go into detail, but there was a lengthy discussion at the last Community Services Advisory Board meeting about how about developing a policy to help make decisions around town donations to local organizations more consistent. And we did touch on this during our last regular council meeting about and so CSAD is looking at what that will look like and the possibility of developing an application form that makes it easy for local organizations to use to apply for donations from the town. The regular meeting for CSAB was originally scheduled for today, but it's been postponed to next week. And I expect that this will be further discussed at next week's meeting as well.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I will preemptively ask Councillor Westphal if he has any comments about the donation policy.
You know, I was just going to sit here and appreciate the work. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. One of my questions was if the discussion itself came out of like organically from the advisory board itself, or was this brought by council administration as an idea to address?
It was brought to CSAB from administration. I'm not sure if administration would like to speak to that.
Mr. Morrison?
Thank you. I know the initial direction was not to talk about donations, but rather to talk about support groups that we not just support groups, community groups that we currently fund. And the discussion was not about limiting the funding or putting that funding into question, but rather as per the community services master plan to work with these groups to ensure that their programming addresses the needs of all the various socioeconomic groups in the community and not just ones perhaps best able to take advantage of their services. So if that means that kids who want to ski but don't have a ride to a ski club, or kids who want to play hockey but don't have access to, new reusable hockey gear, that these sports groups put some thought into that to ensure that our funds just aren't going to perhaps service more well-funded children in sports and not necessarily the poorer ones, and to the detriment of the poorer ones. And so that was sort of the intent. It was directed from the community services master plan. So it wasn't necessarily tied to donations or application forms, but rather to transfer the funding that we currently provide, which is typically only triggered by a request and a provision of financial documents, into more of a memorandum of understanding agreement where we say you are the group that is best able to provide these services, but in return we would like to see some efforts to, access youth that don't have the economic or parental supports required to play sport or other activities. That was the intent, and that's what we approached these with.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Councillor Kuzak?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to almost say what Mr. Morrison had indicated. I brought this up, I believe, last fall, that we need to sort of ensure transparency in our funding monies or the funding that we're providing to groups. When you look at our budget, we have several organizations that we consistently provide a fairly healthy amount of funding to. I'm not at all questioning the level of services they provide, but as a counselor in 2 years, I really didn't see anything that would clearly indicate to me what is that funding actually being used to, how does it address the needs of our ongoing recreational activities in light of the direction that our new community services master plan is trying to move us towards, which is a more inclusive definition of recreation to include softer, more leisure type activities, and again to address the needs of the disadvantaged within our community. And I'm glad to see that we're actually making a significant move to ask those organizations to clearly indicate how are they achieving those objectives on whether how are they achieving those objectives by the organization to ensure our goals and aspirations are being met with the funding that the taxpayers are providing.
Thank you, Councillor Kuzak. Councillor Khan?
Just to, I guess my answer might have been over simplistic. So the discussion that's happening at Community Services Advisory Board is the result of the Community Services Master Plan that we adopted last year, really. And just as administration and Councillor Couvret both spoke to connecting, having organizations that the town currently provides funding to, being able to connect the that funding to objectives in the Community Services Master Plan.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Deputy Mayor Smith?
Thank you. I was very interested and happy to read the minutes. I brought some feedback that I heard for your council meeting and all the things that I suggested were already in the minutes. That's great to see the discussion. This is a really useful discussion to have, but I think it's a discussion that it's not confined to our community. It's a discussion that impacts a lot of what territorial government does. And I think that, for instance, territorial government through kids sport makes registration subsidies available. However, it's not a very well accessed program. It's not a very well utilized program. So why is that? MAC has funding programs that are available to increase access as well. So why aren't they utilized in the way that they could be? And how does the sport, you all know that have been involved in multiple recreational organizations in the community and at a territorial level for years, and I see a disconnect between what goes on the community level versus what's happening through our TSOs at a territorial level. And I think there's a missing element there in terms of accessing disadvantaged youth that also needs to be explored. I'm just saying that a lot of the community organizations aren't operating in a vacuum. They're operating under the policy and direction of territorial sports organizations, which have their own set of policies, et cetera, and these are volunteers. The other point that I just wanted to make, of course, COVID has added an extra layer of burden to a lot of these organizations. I think there's a reference in the minutes about the golf course now being a closed club. That's not something that they chose. That's something that was imposed on them by the government of Alberta so that they can actually open, because that's part of their COVID compliance plan. Similarly, the ski club and paddling club have similar issues. So you can't have open access, otherwise the facilities can't operate. And that's Alberta regulations. So there's a lot of complexities there, but I think that relationship between our local sports organizations and the territorial government and our community services needs to kind of be explored a little bit more, because I don't know, I wouldn't say it's unfair, but I think that there's a layer there that kind of needs to be explored a little bit more, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. And this is excellent dialogue. The intent was never to put money at jeopardy here. It was to start a conversation similar to this, and we felt the Community Services Advisory Board would be the first sort of place to start and have that dialogue where we could see how we could work cooperatively towards working with these groups as sort of a larger percentage of our constituents, right? But nothing is, I know there was some concern when some sports organizations heard about these conversations, but no money is at jeopardy here. The administration, we're not going to advocate for taking people's money away. We just like to have the conversation and see how we can work with groups, even if that means lobbying on their behalf with the GNWP to, we don't know what their constraints are. It starts with the conversation and presumably a very slow rollout similar to the Healthy Foods Initiative at the town canteen, which is a very slow rollout, right? So there's no, this is just information gathering at this point, because it has been given the direction.
Dr. Kissinger?
Yeah, I just have, I understand like Deputy Mayor Smith, a working relationship with the TSO and stuff like that. That's for major sports and that. But when you first read this and the people in the community hear that, they're going to think it's all donation. What are we going to do when someone comes and asks for $300 to put on a little event or something like Sutherland House does every Christmas, that kind of stuff. I just don't want people getting that message. Like, I think we have to have clear messaging before we do this. We don't want that make a burden for little things like that to continue to come for people to ask for donation. That's just my concern. We need to have clear messaging.
Thank you, Councillor Kissinger. Mr. Morrison?
For sure. I mean, that's the purpose of a donation, right? And currently the way donations are set up is that council looks at each one and can make those decisions. This discussion was more, if you look in our budget, we have a certain section of budget where money is preloaded, it's pre-approved by council. $5,000 for there's money for museum, there's money for cross-country skiing. Some stuff we do in kind, for example, minor hockey gets free use of the concession during the winter time as a fundraising opportunity. So there's things there that we're looking, okay, this stuff that's done without question, as Councilor Brett stated, are there things we can have to talk about that to ensure that the greater needs of the community are being met?
Councillor Westman?
A thorough answer to my question. Yeah, if anything, I feel like some of the concerns that I have been raised as well by the advisory board, which, and speaking to what Deputy Mayor Smith had mentioned about the usage, right? Access to some of the programs that are available. That's one of the big concerns, right? Is that going back a dozen years now, one of the concerns has been that the more bureaucratic you make a system, the more people you would effectively close out. As knowledge of somebody trying to start a TSO is you realize the system is built for people who know how it works. And which means that everybody who doesn't know how it works effectively gets excluded. We don't want to become like that. I think that's the goal, to not build something like that, but that's certainly something that is echoed, right? Is that small groups sometimes, and even large size established groups, the more administratively heavy you make something, the harder it is to, or for groups to maintain that, even though it seems like a simple ask. Sometimes the follow-up and the accounting, the place on burdens of volunteers itself becomes its own burden. I can simply ask one of the previous people involved in the organization of the festival, just how the process, went for them as far as helping the program continue. And then at the same time, I would argue to Councilor Corbett's point that it is not a very large town for us to know exactly where our money is going, and to know exactly what it's contributing to. So it is necessary for us to formalize that process to the extent that it might hinder applicant interest. Because again, the events that we have funded and donated to, I felt usually comfortable as a councillor awarding them based on the information that they've already been asked for. And I don't think you have to reach very far to find out what that money went towards, outside of asking for a very detailed accounting, which again, so that's what we want, and that's what we should ask for. But I think that it's, there's a certain balance that we need to find, that is the bureaucracy required to work with the town versus the town wanting to be an empowering partner in group development.
Thank you, Councillor Westwell. Deputy Mayor Smith.
Sorry, I know we've got a lot on the agenda this evening. This is clearly a conversation that has a lot of traction to it, and I look forward to where it evolves to. I look back to our previous community services master plan, and one of the tenets of that was to support volunteer organizations. And it was very difficult for the town to figure out how best to support volunteer organizations. And I think that's echoed in the current community services master plan. And we do it in various ways, but it's not really documented. And so sorry, not to go on and on and on about this, but it's clearly a conversation that needs to happen. I think streamlining processes, here's a template, fill it out online, go straight to town hall, this is your donation request, which clearly articulates what the town is actually looking for, so therefore the volunteer organization can provide that. Those kind of things, we're actually assisting volunteers there, right? Which are making it easier for them to apply for funding. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to see where this goes, because it's clearly a needed conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? At this time, we have an expression of interest for the Community Services Advisory Board. We have a question on what is the current number of representatives on the Community Services Advisory Board. Mr. Morrison?
I've been advised that there's been a recent resignation, so there is room on the board. I think that the applicant is very aware of the recent resignation, as it is her partner. So we're keeping it in the family.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Councillor Cox?
I move that Roman Alves be appointed to the Community Services Advisory Board for a term ending December 31st, 2022.
Yes, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Campbell. Discussion? Councillor Kissinger?
Was there notification that there was a resignation and that we are asking for expressions of interest on the board?
Mr. Morrison?
No, there wasn't, and we'll often take expressions of interest just randomly as, I think all but Community Services Advisory Board are undersubscribed. So we'll sort of take them as we get them, and then what we'll do is we'll run actual calls for interest when we find all our boards are starting to get low on membership. Having said that, if council would like to do a call, because it is a valuable busy board, and we may wish to open the opportunity up to a larger spectrum of the community, I think that's a valid suggestion also.
Councilor Kissinger.
This is something that Mr. Morrison had mentioned, this is we've combined two boards here into one. And I think we should give all citizens an opportunity to apply.
Thank you, Councilor Kissinger. Councilor Westphal?
I feel kind of bad, I guess, in a way that we've never actually had a situation where we've never actually not accepted an application, and so having it be Roma was such an excellent candidate for the board. I feel like it'd be oddly able to do so, but you're not wrong. It's a wide betting board, and due to if they call it inside knowledge of the vacancy, that perhaps it would be appropriate to do that. And I don't think it discredits their current application. So.
Thank you, Councilor Cox.
I agree with Councilor Fishinger. I think considering the two boards amalgamated, and I mean, it is an unusual position for us to be in with an advisory board, but I think it would reflect well on the town to advertise the vacancy and consider Roman's application as part of the, if any others come in.
Thank you. Councilor Kissinger.
I do agree we have an excellent application here. But I just think we should be transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Campbell?
Yeah, I agree, we should put it up for expression of interest.
Thank you. Mr. Morrison?
And if council does feel overcome by a large selection of good candidates, you can oversubscribe the board, right? The actual quorum defines the vote, but rarely do you see contentious votes in the advisory board. So for the cost of the extra lunch, for the extra membership, I'm sure council would entertain additional members on the board. You just get the little squares on the Zoom screen get smaller.
Thank you. I currently have a recommendation by Councilor Cox and Councilor Campbell. Councilor Cox, would you like to speak to your recommendation?
Just that if we vote against it, then we can just rescind it. Okay, then I rescind my recommendation.
Thank you.
Yes, I go with Councilor Cox.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. So we will advertise the vacancy on the Community Services Advisory Board. And next we have the minutes from the Economic Development Advisory Board. Councilor Kirat.
I won't get into too much detail on minutes. Other than a good part of the minute did involve a discussion from administration providing answers to questions that have been brought up at a previous meeting, I believe, in November and December, where several of the board members had asked questions about the awarding contract and things like that. And part of that was administration sort of re-emphasizing that it's an advisory board versus being sort of the oversight board. And just there were some asks on clarification about some of the participants that are there on the board who occasionally have several different responsibilities. They're there as an individual, but also at times are presented questions that they have valuable knowledge on with respect to their work. I meet with a couple of employees that sit on the board, ITI employees. And, there was just concern to ensure that during the process that they were clearly saying yes, we're speaking with either as an individual or as representative of a specific organization. So just clarification on whether it was a personal opinion or information that is from an organization. There's also some discussion about the climate change hub request for proposal that we're hoping will come up for the north sometime in the future, and that this just trying to get the board interested in looking at the terms of reference. Within that, it doesn't look like the town itself qualifies as a proponent to directly apply for it, but it felt that the town could be a body to sort of coordinate and ensure that bring all the parties to the table to start talking about preparing the community to be able to put in a proposal once this request for proposal goes out. And that's already resulted in, through Ms. White's conversation with the proponent in the community, is the Aurora Research Institute has indicated that they would be interested in participating in this as a discussion. So we're already seeing, just having this on at the advisory board level, we're seeing results that people are starting to come forward and say, yeah, we'd like to be part of this discussion. So I think that's a good step forward. And that was about it for the thing. There's a lot more other stuff in here. If anybody has any questions with regards to the minutes, I'll answer this.
Thank you, Councillor Tourette. Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Morrison, we have a COVID-19 update.
Thank you. Not too much new to update here. I've forwarded the information as I get it to council. There's a small outbreak at a diamond mine at Gatchel. It's very easy to contain it in that environment, so there's no concern. But last year there were 6 individuals, I think, at the mine that were positive with COVID. Beyond that, things are quiet in the community. There is heartening news, reading that the DNWP still commits to 75% immunization by the end of the spring. They don't know where the shots are all going to come from, but they feel confident making that commitment. Internally, I think what we should probably note is the director's report on recreation statistics. We're seeing us starting to get more aggressive with our programming. So we're starting to ramp up our programming. We're starting to increase user numbers. We're starting to get more innovative in how we can engage the public. We're in the depths of winter right now. So right now we really need to be out there providing opportunities and places to go for the residents of the community. And so as a result, you're seeing this sort of increased emphasis, and back to the chief public health officer revising plans, rewriting plans. That's also based on the fact that we have, we're starting to come back up to staff in that department. We had a bunch of people head off on parental leave right around when the pandemic hit, and they're all coming on to strength now. And with the additional shock troops, we're getting a lot more programming here.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Any questions or comments by council? At this time. Moving on, we have some recommendations. The selection committee did meet in regards to the Housing Authority Board of Directors and the Board of Revision. At this time, I'm looking for a recommendation. Councillor Kubrick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Christy Jones be recommended for appointment to the Portsmouth Housing Authority Board of Directors as the town of Fort Smith representative.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder for the motion, recommendation, please? Councillor Bolio. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next is the Board of Revision appointment. Councillor Westrum.
I move that Mary Helen Boucher be appointed new member to the Board of Revision.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kubrick. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Councillor Cox.
I move that Councillor Kevin Campbell be appointed to the 2021 Board of Revision on behalf of Council, that Denise Uhas, Ray Curry, John Gray, and Mary Helen Pichet be appointed from the general public to the 2021 Board of Revision, and that the chairperson and board members will be paid $100 per day in accordance with legislation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Bolio. Discussion? All in favor? Abstentions? One abstention, Councillor Campbell. Motion is passed. At this time, I'm looking for excusing of councillors. Can I get a member, please? Councillor Cox.
I move that Councillor MacArthur be excused from the Community Services Standing Committee meeting on February 9th, 2021.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kissinger. Councillor MacArthur did advise that he would be unable to attend tonight's meeting in accordance with council procedures and bylaw. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. The next meeting of Community Services Standing Committee is March 9th, 2021, and I'm looking for a motion to adjourn Community Services. Councillor Cox.
I move that the meeting be adjourned at 8:03 p.m.
Thank you. Can I get a second there? Councillor Campbell. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously.
Very good, thank you.
At this time, I will pass the chair to Councillor Westmore.
Good evening, good evening. So the agenda does state, or the backer does seem to state in the agenda that it starts at 8:15, but I'm not sure if council has, or has a wish to get a drink of water and take 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. So at well, we'll call it 10 after 8.
Thank you. How are you doing? Good. That's what I came to see. I know on Thursday, but I just couldn't meet.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be full.
Donations have their own application. The reason we're in the budget is partners. So, yeah, you know, the memorandum of understanding. Exactly, and it doesn't have to be onerous. It can just say, you know, you don't just bring money, but it's ready to go for services.
Meeting what time Thursday? What time Thursday, 6, 7?
Yeah, it's in the evening. And I know the plans are gonna be out there and stuff. I knew they were coming out today too. Yeah. I don't see the main first week for June area.
Or you got in front of me?
Main floor family stuff, Washington.
Junior, right?
Yeah. Okay,
This is your community.
right, yeah.
You know, Washington.
Okay, yeah, got it. Okay. So there is the category. That's a big one for me. Having an extra here.
Here, be smaller entrances, double tours.
Yep.
Area.
So we'll have, this is our normal doors. We'll have two doors each we need. God, is anything ever happen? You know how slow moving our seniors are with that one little door? So there's two doors. Great, that makes me very happy. Okay, and what the heck is this?
I know.
So
That's the office there.
that's the office.
No, right here.
The office.
The office, that's an entrance way, the vestibule.
But I
That's
mean,
just coming through two doors there. And this is sort of like an atrium. I don't know how to say the
Atrium.
atrium.
An atrium? Okay. There's still.
That's the office right there.
So
That's chairs,
they
those are chairs.
changed this around.
Man, I was in the gym today.
Okay.
There's like a
Then
snow
we
pile.
have storage.
Well, they're still talking Mary storage. We put out for days.
Okay, but the storage is gone. Yes. Depending on.
No, this won't be much room in there.
Okay, so that's just enough.
That'll be a heater in there. You won't be able to put storage in there. This, they talk somewhere in here storage.
But it just blows right in. Every year. I feel like there must be something.
Where's the storage?
Storage right now is on.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
It's gone.
Yeah, I don't know why.
That's what
Yeah,
that's the
that's
question.
what- yeah.
I was gonna say earlier, thank you for coming.
Oh, yeah.
And, we are, Matt and I are both on communications, and we struggle with getting people to attend our round bag lunches. So we're doing, we have a question period at regular council.
One sidewalk in town.
Tuesday every month. We have a question period at the end of the meeting where people come and ask any question they want. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that. If you are unable to attend, we're accepting questions by email.
Oh, cool.
Because the,
Yeah.
it's broadcast live on YouTube, so we can answer them. Anyway, there should be some advertisements around that going on this week.
Okay,
Just
that's
make
good.
make sure you're aware.
Yeah.
Tell everybody.
So that's the third week, right?
Yeah, our third one. Third Tuesday meeting.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Okey dokey, I believe everybody's back at their chairs. So let's call I guess that's technically the order. We'll call the meeting back to order at 8:10. Is there any declarations of financial interest this evening? Seeing none. We have no delegations on the agenda for municipal services. Can I have somebody move the approval of the agenda? Or once, Councilor Brett.
I move the agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councilor Cox. Discussion? Hearing none. Oh, go ahead. Pop the glasses up.
I would like to possibly add one item under, I guess it would be 10B for the examiner discussion. It's just to briefly discuss the NWT Association Community AGM, which is happening in, I believe, 2 weeks. Just to talk about our representation at that event.
So you're recommending item 10D be changed to a new item and then we move to 10E for the in-camera session? Is that agreeable with the mover and seconder? Anything further? All those in favor of the agenda as amended? Carrie, thank you very much. As was stated in the last meeting, these are the minutes from the meeting of January 12th were adopted and approved at our council meeting of January 19th. So unless there is any additional information or burning issues that need to get brought up, we have a pretty thick agenda this evening. We can try to work our way through the tail end of. Okay, we also have included these revisions and values, which again, unless there's any issues that need to be driven home this evening, does administration wish to have any items that discuss the capital plan time at this time and council? I think further to the 2021 capital plan at this time. Okay, so that brings us right to the director's report. Administration.
Thank you. I'll pass on to the director for the reporting on the director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Yeah, we'll continue on. It's winter, a lot of snow. Public Works is continuing the snow removal. The east portion of town is largely complete, and you'll notice that we are starting to do the central portions. St. Anne's, Cummings Avenue. We'll keep moving further west, starting to do King Street in front of the schools again, which will be the second and third time this year. I believe the third time, and on to Google. As always, please check the Town Force website for the latest updates and what streets we're doing for cause less interruptions and keep our residents safe. We have municipal services. 2 of our supervisors of 3 departments are currently on extended leave for different reasons. But in saying that, the experienced operators, workers, and lead hands have stepped up to fill a role, and things are still running smoothly. I guess back to the weather. It has been extremely cold, extremely windy. I honestly don't know which is worse, the 44 below or today and yesterday with less than -30, but the winds we've been getting. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to have a shout out to the crews that are required to work outside, and they do so, and they do so safely. I do not have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council for administration? Councilor Campbell?
When are we going to get an after hours number that we can phone into?
That's a question for the SAO directed through the meeting. Okay, well, I mean, the administration has an answer to that, wish no or not.
It's the same answer we had before. We understand the need for it. We're trying to figure out who will hold the phone in this case. It's a paid person. We're not currently budgeted to the after hours support. Right now, we rely on the goodwill of our supervisors and our staff to pick up the phone when we have after hours emergencies. Having said that, all directors in the SAO, we get time off in lieu of overtime, so we're kind of always available. Those aren't necessarily publicly available numbers, so, but we are aware of the issue and looking to put something together. together. We have been slowly starting to empower our front desk staff at the rec center to carry some after hours level of call-ins because the rec center is open from 6 to 11 or 12 at night. And so we've been using them for our safety, our work alone programs where staff are out operating after hours alone, whether they're doing a sewage pump out after hours or bylaws doing enforcement after hours. And in those cases, they call the rec center. So as we develop skills at the front desk there, that will become one of our after hours contacts. We just haven't got that far yet in the development of our process.
Thank you very much. Good. Anything further? Hearing none, that brings us right along to the protective services report. So pass the ball back to administration.
And I'll keep it moving along to Ms. White.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. We'll start with the fire department statistics and training. Just gonna knock on wood. Some very relatively quiet month of January for the fire department. They did respond to an MBA, which is not always difficult, but the person from the fire department directly. Lots of good training happening. I think very important to note that the protective services supervisor had a system come down from Yellowknife in order to be able to do mass fit testing for all of volunteer staff. So all of our volunteer staff in the fire and EMS are now properly mass fit tested for their gear, so they can properly wear all of their equipment. This is the first time in a number of years that they've all been trained. We just happen to have the internal capacity in our supervisor to be able to do the mass fit testing, so that's pretty awesome. Otherwise, we have to bring a contractor in. With that, also, they are continuing with training some new volunteers there, and growing that department. I think we're pretty much full at this point. I don't know if they can actually have the capacity to take any more volunteers on trucks. With ambulance, quite a lengthy list of ambulance services for the month of January, and I think, in December we also saw quite a lengthy list, and we're seeing, I think, already our medevacs starting off higher this year than they were last year. But yeah, very busy time for the ambulance services. Some delay on getting some of the volunteers trained in regards to getting their class 4 licenses to drive the ambulance, which is normally the first step as a volunteer, is to be the driver. But because of the shutdowns of the motor vehicle office and then these trouble scheduling appointments, it's been a challenge to get those volunteers trained, including our bylaw officer is also waiting on getting that done. And then we're also looking at running another EMR course. So we did run an EMR course in 2020, but because of the COVID restrictions, it was a very small group compared to normal in order to support physical distancing. But even though we had more space available, the chief public health officer would only allow that many people to take the course at a time. So we will be running another EMR course in the early part of spring. I think early April is the full scheduled time, but it has not been confirmed yet. And then you might notice that our bylaw officer's been super busy again. Look at that pile of things. Yeah, I think quite a nice variety of things. We have quite a bit of stuff around our dogs, dog bylaw. Following up council's request to have more enforcement around the school zone. I don't think it's how been issued in some of these cases. Basically, with any of the ones that are loading and unloading on the roadway after that council meeting, there's been tickets issued. I think he's at 4 or 5 road tickets. And also operating ATVs without helmets. So really enforcing many of our bylaws out there, but really focusing again on that school zone and try to get people to act more safely in the school zone.
But yeah, very busy.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Cox.
Just a comment that it was very encouraging to read the bylaw report this month, and the impressive that our lone bylaw officer was able to do both the animal control and traffic bylaw. So, and just to clarify, I guess I do have one question. The loading, unloading on a roadway, that the vast majority of those are parents stopping on McDougal or Convair to let their kids out to get to school.
That is correct. Yes.
Any further questions? Councillor Campbell?
I'd like to put a big thank you to the fire department for flooding our rink at the old soccer field. Thank you.
If there's anything else, just yes, I'd like to recognize that every morning, or not every morning, but many mornings and in afternoons, I've seen the bylaw at work. So controlling the traffic, or even just the presence alone, has been making a difference to the speed of the school zones between the GBT and PWK. So efforts are very much appreciated. If there's nothing else under Corrective Services reports, that brings us to advisory board reports, which is actually myself. Sustainable Development Advisory Board. It's the minutes from last month. We did not have a meeting last week due to quorum. Did I have any questions? Just getting the teeth into some good conversations, and there was actually a homework assignment. And I think there was a fair bit of homework done, and then unfortunately there wasn't enough people to have a meeting. So there seemed to be some traction with this item, though not an easy item to take. It does actually seem to have garnered some good discussion, and is worthwhile. Questions? Councillor Cox.
Just again, another comment, expression of thank you, I guess gratitude to SDAP for the work dealing with this zoning issue, and I look forward to seeing the reading additional minutes of the outcome of their discussion. This is exactly, I think, what exactly why we have advisory boards for their input. Thank you.
Councillor Corbett.
Thank you, Chair. I believe this is more of a question for administration. It is a result of some great work done by Sustainable Development Advisory Board. And we heard about it tonight from our earlier delegate at an earlier meeting about the housing issue. I know there are plans to look at addressing it. I was just wondering if there was any timelines to move it forward.
The administration has a hand up for a separate question, but I'm not sure if there's a throw that one on the fire already.
Okay, well, I'll first start with, you noted the advisory board doing some homework, and there was some good homework done, not minute at the meeting, where there was discussion about what tools are best used to regulate substances, whether zoning and development, control where the businesses are located, or use business licensing bylaw to try and control business activities. And I think it might come to a point where it comes before the bylaw review committee just to talk about sort of what role business licensing bylaw plays in the 21st century, because I know that this town has been through some ups and downs with business licensing. How much regulation do we want to put in? Do we want to check the certification of contractors working in our community? Do we wish to put that level of regulation and diligence, or do we wish to rely on high levels of authority to do that? With respect to housing and the discussions, there's no real, there is funding in the capital plan, to go, well, no funding, but, yes, a trigger in the capital plan, an unfunded capital line item to do a further housing needs assessment, and that was put with a local consultant to go out and find the money. And so the local consultant has been, was actually given 3 projects to advance. The community energy plan, which has resulted in a semi-approved application with our Energy Alliance. They just, they got pandemic and didn't really do anything all summer, and so we're currently on the books for next summer. The climate change adaptation application that the economic development officer is putting in was actually initiated by these consultants as well. So the one thing we're waiting on them for is the housing assessment. Having said that, there's a couple of other things afoot. For example, Salt River First Nation is in the process of advancing a 40-house subdivision. And the town is working with them to advance that project. It's got some intricacies associated with it. For example, typically when a developer builds a subdivision, they hand over all the public infrastructure when they're complete. So it starts with a big block of private land, and they go and they survey it out into a bunch of lots, but also a bunch of roads and a bunch of ditches and a bunch of sidewalks and lift stations and water lines and sewer lines. And anything that is not a private lot, when it's completed, it gets handed over to the town, and the town owns, operates, and replaces it. And so we have to figure out what that looks like when the subdivision is built by a First Nation. You can't necessarily transfer ownership of this infrastructure over too simple. So we're looking at that. We're also reviewing the designs. That cost of development is that of the developer, and so we're in the process of putting an MOU in place with Salt River First Nation, stating that they understand that the cost for us to hire engineers to oversee their work are theirs to bear, and the cost of the lawyers to write the legal agreements and say the costs are theirs to bear. And so we're putting all that in place as we work with them. But the tender did close on the 22nd of January, so I'm looking forward to seeing who the proponent is there. So that's 20 houses. 20 lots, sorry, 40 lots, I should say. I don't know, 40 houses, 40 lots. So whether houses get built there or not, it is either 40 houses or it's a big detriment to private development, right? Because if you're a private developer, you might be hesitant to build that housing if your competition is going to be subsidized government housing brought to the table by another entity within the community, right? So it could either stifle housing development or it could bring the housing to the community. I guess it depends on how many houses they build on those lots and how they make them available to residents of the town. This stuff I don't know yet. The other thing the town is looking at is in the 2021 capital plan of advancing a review of the community plan and zoning bylaw. So we are subject to GMWT legislation that requires periodic review of these documents. So we think it's about time to bring that forward. With changes around regulated substances, we want to look at that kind of stuff. Maybe take a look at the slide zone. I'm not saying open the slide zone up to residential development and have houses perched on cliffs, but maybe remove some of the wording around occupancy and habitation that has been detrimental to recreation development in the area in the recent past. And the other thing, which is currently sort of getting hopefully sorted out, is the concept of mid and high density housing developments, especially when they're focused at low income families. Putting a whole bunch of low income houses together without any other thought around development or concept of community hasn't been that successful, and we're thinking that maybe the key to success there is putting some developmental controls on that, not just saying this area is R2 and that's it. You can build as many multifamily homes as you want. If you look at the requirements we already have on the books around subdivision by private development, we require 10% of that development in parkland, right? So why not in existing neighborhoods too? Can we perhaps have some sort of development controls like that? And this is, of course, related to conversations that happened last week around housing corporation proposed development. And so while we might not find ourselves getting on a lot by lot approval of what the housing corporation does in neighborhoods in our community, we may find ourselves setting higher level standards and require a certain percentage of green space in given neighborhood. And so that's why we're hoping to look at the community plan and the zoning bylaw sooner rather than later. And hopefully that will facilitate some community development, some home development, some rethink of what our neighborhoods look like.
One of the challenges I've noticed as well is that a couple of years ago that spurred a lot of the tail end of the discussion about seeking third-party funding for development of comprehensive housing strategies. We're all about partnerships with all levels of government, sort of a holistic community solution. And unfortunately, a lot of those programs either haven't disappeared, but they've certainly taken a back bench during COVID. We just aren't on the front anymore. And that's sort of taken away the needed initiatives, I think, that we're starting to sort of percolate for housing solutions and indigenous community housing solutions and partnership levels of government. A lot of interest for the federal housing initiatives and nonprofit groups into getting into sort of not just building social health housing, sort of ghettos, building community plans, the whole plans. And so it's just unfortunate that's taken a back bench the last year and a half. Anyway, thank you, Keith, for the thorough update. Any further questions we get on SDAB minutes? We'll move right along. As I said, we have a big agenda this evening. That brings us to actually bylaw policy review. Probably don't have anything on this evening's agenda, so my knowledge. If not, that brings us back to administration.
Thank you. We do have a donation request from Dog Mushing, but we're still gathering information, and we'll hope to bring that donation request to the council meeting next week. However, we do have a briefing note on a snowboard donation request for Big Fun that was authored by Ms. White.
I guess that's him passing the chair to you.
Yes, so. So you see before you this donation request on the slides on Shredder Snowboard Club. They are requesting the use of EMS services for the Snowboard Territorial Championships and the local Big Fun event, which are February 27th and 28th. This local sport club will be offering or will be hosting territorials every second year, and this will be the second time that they'll have hosted territorials. We hosted it right before AWG. The Big Fun event has been going on since really the snowboard park was built, and it was a town initiative, but is now being taken over by Snowboard Club as they become more sustainable without as much town support. But they are asking for support with EMS services because snowboarding is a high-risk sport. People will be jumping off of things. And I have confirmed with the Protective Service Supervisor that volunteer EMS staff will make themselves available. The cost is $960. And I just want to point out that the club this is all the club is asking for from us. The rest of their funding, they have sought out funding from a number of other territorial and regional organizations. Your donations budget annually is $6,500, and this is the first donation request of this fiscal year. Please remember that the donation budget is usually expended completely by the end of the year, and have a number of regular donations that are asked for at that budget as the year goes on. We're just seeking your direction on this donation request.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Councilor Cox.
I can move the recommendation.
If you'd like to.
I move that mayor and council donate the cost of full EMS support with 2 staff each day, totaling $960 to Slidestone Shredder Snowboard Club for the end of UT Snowboard Territorial Championships and local Big Fun Snowboarding event on February 27th to 28th, 2021.
Thank you. And is that seconded by Mayor Napier? Yeah, just making sure. The signal was a little bit earlier. Questions? Councilor Minister?
Just a question from this way. You mentioned that this is part of the council donation for the year. So what happens when we give pool passes and that to other organizations that ask for donations? Is that not in kind, or was this?
So when you make a donation for something like pool passes, it actually comes out of your donations and goes into the revenue of that specific part of the organization. So it would go direct to revenue for pool passes. This will go to offset the costs of wages for that. So it will come out of your donations budget and go to offset the cost of wages for the volunteers. They're not asking for a cash donation, that's why we call it in kind.
Did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, it's still coming out of our donations, which is a certain amount, so it takes
Mayor Smith?
Thank you. I don't know if council's aware, this is an event that's bringing people into the community. There'll be a significant number of Yellowknife coming down. I'm not sure where they're staying, maybe in hotels. They're going to be on our floats and early. So I think their TSO is supporting them with discounted flight. So there's an economic development component to this as well, which are few and far between these days and these COVID times, despite the best efforts of the East Vacation.
And just to clarify, the $960 as you mentioned here, he's actually going towards the wages of the UNS staff as well, right? Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation? Carried. Thank you. Okie dokie. That brings us on to our next briefing note, B, which is the CRC renovations briefing note. First, but a large portion of what's in this package this evening, I believe. Administration.
Sure. So it is trying to count here, looking at the numbers at the bottom of the page. It's a 7-page briefing note. So the first couple of pages are actually the previous briefing note given to council, and this is treated as an update. And in the initial briefing note, I spoke to council about the process where we went out and solicited public input. The input was handed over to the designers who sent us back conceptual designs, and then we went through and sort of iteratively fine-tuned them to the things that we felt met the needs of the residents and users that were consulted and met operational needs, at which point anything that was considered to be in addition to the initial contract were some things that weren't thought of when the initial design build contract was put forward. They were costed. And in that process also, we did what was called fast track. We accelerated the basement work because the basement was the simplest. It was easy enough to get in, get working on the basement, which allowed continued use of the rest of the facility. And then with the basement done, we could relocate Pete's Gym, opening up the second floor for the second phase of construction. And so the basement work got fast tracked. But what we have now is before council is the main floor and the second floor designs. These are schematic designs, so basically just walls. They do a good job of indicating the flow through the facility, how people will move, what the expectations are in each space. And with approval of these, and we'll go on to design development, where we'll do mechanical drawings, the electrical drawings, start talking about finishes, what the floors are going to be like, what the wall treatments are going to be, what the color colors are, et cetera. So those are the schematic designs before council, as well as any of the additional costs. And so starting at the top of page 3, I walk you through the design. And basically what I tried to do in the briefing note is provide a verbal walkthrough through the pictures that are provided, the drawings. And one of the intents was, I know the steering committee will be engaged in the public and resident engagement sessions over the next week. And I thought it would help if they had some form of script or talking points to facilitate that process. And that's one of the roles this briefing note is intended to serve. So I will start reading my own writing. One of the interesting things is whenever I read one of my briefing notes back, I find all my spelling mistakes. Of course, I don't find them before I issue it. But then again, I did ask Ms. White to proofread it, so truly she carries the blame for any spelling mistakes at this point. Yeah. So schematic designs and prices have been received for the main and second floors of the Senate Council for approval. The steering committee, I know the steering committee here engages residents and users with the designs to ensure their needs and requirements are adequately captured. So this next round of engagement that council will be doing, supported by these designs, are not to do any redesign, but to confirm it's basically a what we heard exercise. Did we hear you and capture them, capture your needs? And so this is the exercise. What we would want to come out of this is basically to have residents say, you know, you didn't hear us on this issue, we'd rather something like this. And so really we're not asking the council to pull out pencils and rulers and start redrafting layouts as part of these sessions. That's the job of architects, right? We're asking council to go out and say, does this meet your needs as was stated to us in the first round of engagement? So the latest drawings are attached. They indicate the proposed renovations to the main and second floors. Millwork and furniture have yet to be confirmed. Where furniture is something you can move, millwork isn't. So millwork might be, for example, those counters in the kitchen, whereas furniture is the table we're working on here. As our finishes and mechanical electrical drawings also have to be determined, that will be done during the design development phase. So we will be coming back to council with finished schedules. Do you like these floor treatments? Do you like these colors? These sort of things. Drawings as presented give a great feel of the functionality of each space, right? And how public staff and users will be able to move between spaces. So we can look at a particular space like the daycare, the library, and see it unto itself, but you can also see them, how they relate to each other, because a lot of the intent of this design was to create an overall fully functional facility where people can move from space to space as needs require. So in your package of drawings, your first two sheets, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, they have numbers. The first two are A sheets. So there's an A702 and an A203. And those are basically the overall layouts of your first floor and your second floor. And I'll be using these a lot. But if you ever want to zero in on any of the follow-up spaces, you'll see attached sketches. These are SD sketches. And they're sort of like microscope in close-up views of the various areas of the floor plan. So we're going to take a guided tour through the facility, starting with the entry. So the entry will remain relatively unchanged. It's going to be in the same space. And for those who aren't familiar with drawings, I hope we all know what a door looks like. It's a thing that looks like a door from above. It's a straight line with an arc tied to it. So that's the main entry. It's labeled main vestibule. But when you walk in, you're going to basically be offered three options. There will be revised access to the seniors room and the curl and change rooms on your right. There will be the ability to move forward deeper into the facility, into the administration area or up the stairs to the library, or there'll be a ability to go to the left. And also, of course, as per previous, by the seniors room entrance is the access to the public washrooms. So to your left, one of the things you'll notice, we've removed the walls to the games room. So there used to be that room right to your left when you walk in that didn't have a ceiling. So you could hear the kids playing ping pong all throughout. And as you went up the stairs, you could actually look down on them. So that wall is going to disappear. That's going to open up the stairs to the library and make the access to the upstairs library more apparent. But it's also going to create a common area. So the idea is this is one of the hearts of the facility. We want to provide a gathering space where everyone in the community feels comfortable. Little kids, seniors, rich people, poor people, it doesn't matter. This is a place where you can go, you can get in out of the cold. There will be access to free Wi-Fi. You can sit, you can surf, you can read, you can relax after working out at the gym. You can let your hair dry after being in the pool before going outside in -40. You can wait to pick your kids up at the daycare. As you notice, there is an access to the daycare. And perhaps if we have both of the concessions on either level are operating, you might be able to buy a smoothie, buy a coffee, buy a sandwich. So that's the concept of the common area. And then again, I talked about being able to travel deeper in. And so traveling deeper in past the elevator and the stairs up to the library, you come to the admin core. This is the administration core. So it's basically the same place as it was before, where the desk is, where you see our community services guys keeping an eye on things. But we've removed the concession out of that area to allow for more office space. And what we've done is we've also made the counter there double wide. So with the double wide counter, we can have staff positioned such to get a lot better line of sight control over the entire facility. They can see around the corner into the gym. They can get better angles into the front entry or down the hall towards the school. It also creates seating spaces for 2 community services assistants, and it provides enough room to keep sort of the things that they hand out frequently, whether it's basketballs, badminton rackets, backgammon sets, any of the things, the program equipment that they might be giving out to users of the facility, we're able to keep right there. Moving deeper into the core, you've got the Recreation and Special Events Coordinator office, as well as the Director of Community Services office. You've got a storage room, that's your photocopier room, your paper, that sort of thing. That's also your second exit, right? This is where, for security reasons, remember, we're open at 6, we don't close till midnight, we handle cash. The person at that desk needs the ability to escape from the desk if necessary. Also in there is the staff room, it's a legislative requirement. There's a staff washroom there, and then you've got the janitor's closet. This is an existing janitor's closet. We're just swinging the door around to the southern corridor, because what we heard from the squash players is they'd like a bit more wall there for a bit of storage. So that's what's happening in the admin area. Let me see, got ahead of myself here. Let's do some reading. Okay, one of the other things is you notice if you've ever been in the facility and you've moved through the change room, there is a control door there. This is a door that a person can open and close. That control door is going to remain. So you're going to see 3 control doors in the facility. The control door up to the library, the control door to the basement, and the control door into the change rooms and further into the pool. So these are going to be the remaining. These are going to be the 3 places that we manage access control of the facility. And also, where it used to be before you went into the change room, you would have to take your coat off, take your boots by the front desk. Now your boots and your coats are going to be past the control doors. So there is going to be boot and coat area in the basement when you go down the stairs. There will be boot and coat area at the top of the stairs once you get into the library, and there will be a boot and coat area in the change room on the main floor. Okay, turning to page 4. Talk quickly about the gymnasium. It's going to remain relatively unchanged. What you're going to see is if you look on the west side there, you see a whole bunch of little doors. That's a whole bunch of storage under the stage. So the idea is right now, whenever we want to bring tables and chairs up for an event, they have to get loaded onto the elevator and brought up. It's a real pain in the butt for the community services assistants. Now we'll have all that stuff right there. The other big thing is that we found soundproofing throughout that space. It doesn't show on the layouts, but hopefully an acoustic engineer has been hired by the contractor. They're going to manage sound better in the gymnasium. We did look at pocket walls, movable partitions that would allow us to divide the space into smaller spaces. You might actually see something indicated on that drawing there, but we have no pricing on it yet. And unless we hear a loud hue and cry, I don't see us pursuing it. It's something that can actually be added at a later date. So that's a gymnasium. We also see some bleachers in the corridor. In the corridor, there's a big hallway there. Will also be used for programming. It currently is. We have ping pong tables and foosball tables. We have tables for kids to hang out during use night. We'll continue to use that corridor for programming. We will have to see what access to and from the school looks like. Right now, we see a lot of parents dropping off at the rec center, a lot of kids moving through the facility. We'll have to look operationally how we manage that into the future. We do know that the school is very excited that there will now be a library attached to the high school, and as well as access to all the other facilities for the students. Going the other way, we talked about the access door. If you move deeper into the facility, the change rooms will be located into the same place. You come in, there'll be one entrance into the change rooms. Again, there'll be a boot coat area right there. There is going to be, when I say 9 water closets, a barrier-free water closet, shower, 3 family change rooms, and 8 private shower / change rooms. And again, the 2 change rooms, male and female, have been amalgamated. What we've heard from users with large groups, easier to manage large groups with the one supervisor for all the kids. There will be common area there as well as all the individual rooms where you'll have your benches and your lockers and your sinks. Same approach as we took to the basement change rooms, and you'll see that approach throughout the rest of the facility. Okay, so the other thing to note is the daycare. So this is sort of one of the focal areas of the facility. This is going to be located where the after school care program room is, the party room, and I think the old fitness room is going to be located where the old fitness room used to be. Fitness room is now down in the basement. Daycare will do after school care, and the party room will be converted into the daycare. Basically, all the walls have been knocked out to create one space. It is funded by GNWT funding. So this is the additional $250,000 that's paying for the development of this space. When it's complete, it will accommodate 20 after-school care children. So these are kids in school that just need care between 3 and 5 o'clock, 16 toddlers and 8 infants. It is being designed with a separate entrance. There will be a development of fenced park playground area on the outside, so the controlled access into the playground area. And then there is a little entry vestibule there. The scale of the entry is designed, it's not big double glass doors. It's going to be a single door. They're not be intimidating to the younger kids using it. This brings you into a vestibule. The vestibule will also have an access into the common area I mentioned initially. So this is where parents can sit and wait, lounge while their kids are taking advantage of programming. Moving through that, you get into the cubby storage, and this is where we have to put storage for boots and coats for upwards of, 20 plus 16 plus 8, 44 sets of boots and coats, and they all have different needs. The infants have the gear, and then you have your primary area, which is indicated there. In there, so also got the nap room, which is mandated for X number of kids. We have to have a nap room. The kitchen became mandated to be able to prepare food to operate a daycare. We have the office for the child care supervisors, some washrooms, all designed with lots of what we call fenestration or windows to provide sight lines throughout. So if you're in a space, you can see out into the common area. If you're in a common area, you can see into the space. And then I'd also note that the child care area itself has lots of windows, lots of sight lines into the pool and into the outside and the play area. There's a storeroom. It's sized. There can be some breakout storage programming in the storage room. And then you've got a couple of additional accesses. One allows you to access on the other side of the corridor, the control door to let the kids into the pool or into the gymnasium. And then another one that is proximate to the elevator for easy movement of supplies in and out of the daycare. All right. Moving across, I initially mentioned the seniors room, which is one of the first things available on your right from the entry. So coming into the seniors room, you see a substantial refit in acknowledgement of its primary role and location in the facility. First off is you're seeing a bit of a reconfiguration of the access. And so the accesses to the seniors room, the curling change room, and the washrooms have been configured such that by opening or closing doors, we can provide access into the washroom, into the curling room, or into the seniors room without necessarily having to move through the primary facility, should users wish opt out after our access without us having to staff the facility. So that's one of the things, is that, you know, seniors can get into the washrooms without having to go into the rec center, ditto curlers. Or we can isolate the entrance so that the seniors room and the curlers room are not conjoined. Any of the combinations of the two. In the public washroom, you're going to see 5 water closets, a barrier-free water closet, and sinks. And again, a water closet is not stall as you're used to now. A water closet is its own entire little room. So it's a little room with a toilet in it. And so all this communal actually are the sinks. Next, we're providing a second entrance to the seniors room. This is done by pushing out the front of the room with an atrium. So the atrium is pushed out, requiring a foundation. It's a glassed area. As you can see there, it's got sliding doors to open or close it to the outside, plus a separate entry. You'll also see some park development in front of it, maybe picnic tables, that sort of thing, paths. So when you approach the rec center now, you're actually going to see 3 distinct entrances. You're going to see the daycare on the left. You're going to see the seniors room on the right with its cafe-style entrance, and then you see the primary entrance facility in the middle. And that is sort of the theme here, is a cafe-style entrance to just kind of add a relaxing feel, right? Where you can go try to create a social feel, where you can sit, socialize in a quiet environment, or do other forms of programming. To support the cafe style, the kitchen is being refitted to provide a counter, so it can be a service by the counter. What else? I think those are the primary ones, is the atrium, the redo of the washrooms, and the kitchen counter service. Yeah, so that's the seniors room. Those are the proposed changes there. So finally, there's going upstairs. So if you go upstairs, you get to the library. So one of the primary things with the library is complete sound control. We want it to not be subject to any of the noise or hurly-burly at the main floor. So that means it will be completely cut off, and all the sort of open overlooks and stuff that you used to on the second floor will all be gone. The viewing to the squash court will be gone. The viewing to the gymnasium will be gone. The overlook out into the main entry will be gone. The stairs will be closed off. So at the top of the stairs in the drawing, you'll see a little kind of wall with some zigs and zags on it on a door. That wall is just shaped like that to match the contours of the ceiling that you've got to meet. And to meet the requirements, there's a landing when you come through the door. So there's a need for a landing there by code. So that's a big aspect of the library. So you're going to have, as part of your entry experience, you're going to see the stairs much more prominently upstairs than you do currently, because the wall is going to be removed from the game room. You're going to come up, you're going to go through a door, and you're going to be in a quiet space. So you're in your quiet space, your new library. I'm just going to open that for mine right now. Give my mouth a chance to get less tasty. All right. So coming up into the library. So as soon as you come through the doors, as I showed, there will be a boot and coat area there. That's again, you're not going to have to sit and take your boots off or take your coat off and find the circulation desk downstairs like you used to. Now you actually come into the space, take your coat off. On the other side of that wall is the washroom, and it's going to have six water closets, one barrier-free water closet, sinks. Again, the same thing. This washroom has been relocated. If you note now, if you go upstairs, the washroom is in the center court. And so it's really disrupted the sight lines and our ability to move space. And so it's been taken and it's been moved against the wall to the lounge. The other great thing about putting it there is it's right adjacent to the entrance to the curling lounge. So people that are using the room, renting that curling lounge, using it for licensed events, have we've done to increase the overall area of the library is currently the fitness room on the main floor is 2 stories. So they're going to turn it into a 1-story room, make it part of the daycare, and put in structural steel that's able to carry the book loads. And so if you look at the blue area there, that's where the fitness room was. That's going to become increased area of the library on the 2nd floor. And then the current contract allows for the orange area, which is again reinforced steel. So again, coming out the doors, you get your washroom on the right, you're gonna have your circulation desk straight ahead, and then you're gonna have kind of public computers and more of a lounge to your left. And so the idea is if you have a louder lounge on the main floor, we call it the kind of community sitting area, right at the entry, you're gonna come up, you're gonna have something similar to quieter. This is where computer access is good. Points are gonna be our public computers, where kids are gonna be working more studiously with things. So same idea, community, but quieter with a stern librarian telling you to shh on occasion. The circulation desk is the heart of the facility. It's shown as, it is going to be millwork and built in. We haven't quite finished the design, but you've got kind of a placeholder there of what it can be. And it's going to be centralized. It's going to have line of sight throughout the library. And adjacent to it, we're going to have different developmental areas. We're going to have a children and junior area, which has specific books, specific furniture, storage and millwork for specific things that the little kids like. As you move counterclockwise, you'll have a young adult area, which will have maker space, different kinds of furniture, different kinds of equipment and storage. You'll have stacks throughout. You'll have study barrels throughout. And then where the existing offices in Pete's Gym, that's going to become the librarian's office, become the workroom. And so those walls will most likely actually stay. So I talked about that. So as far as the curling lounge, we don't have any plans for it currently, just a provision of additional storage to allow for multi-purpose use of the facility. We may wish to, in our consultations, talk about additional renovations to this space, even if it's just a refreshing of current finishes in there. There is a storage room on the far end of the curling lounge, and that is just tend to be as secure storage for rare books that require temperature control, these sorts of things. So that's kind of, again, this is the verbal walkthrough of the facility, trying to hit the key points about flow, usability, the relations of the spaces, how we see our staff functioning and operating. You notice I referred to 3 different supervisors. So you'll have the librarian, who's our supervisor of arts and culture services, not just for recreation office on the 2nd floor. We will have the director, the supervisor of recreation and special events, our physical recreation guy on the main floor, our supervisor of childcare in the daycare center. Then the director will also be there with the 3 supervisors overseeing the whole gamut. Gamut? Gamut. So as far as cost, most of this work is included in the original proposal. However, some work was added as a result of the consultations with residents and the additions. So there's currently additional costs for the daycare. Brings in some additional costs being funded by the GMWT. The senior gym changes bring in some additional costs, and the library costs. So if we look at the overall cost on the project, it's funded $250,000 or $2.5 million, a federal small communities fund grant. We were provided to bring in a certain percentage of that, so we're coming in with $1.5 million to create a $4 million project. The work, the successful proposal was $3.6 million, $3.65 million. In addition to that, approximately $63,000 of furniture for Pete's Gym has been approved. So total against that $4 million, we've approved then $3.7 million. That gives us $288,000 cash left at approved council money. Having said that, since council award, the following monies have come on stream: $250,000 from the GMWT for daycare infrastructure funding, $25,000 from the GMWT for library infrastructure funding. Plus, we received $197,000 or $195,000 retroactive CPI capital funding from the GMWT. That brings to the table $470,000 additional sort of found money, right? So the proposed additional costs are as follows. I provided kind of a summary of them. The actual proposal, the actual cost, contemplated change is in your package, but this is a summary. $70,000 for the additional entrance and exterior development for the daycare, for the additional doors and vestibule. For the library, $125,000. That includes an external book job, the relocation of the washrooms, and all the structural sealing required to the structural sealing over the fitness room required to expand the library square footage on the second floor. Seniors room, including the new kitchen, the new public washroom, complete retrofit, and the atrium space up front is $282,000. Some money for the administration area reconfiguration, $6,500. You have design fees in there. You have some percentage such as bonding and overhead for a total of $614,584 is the proposed change order. So basically what happens if you take what we still got left, the 288, and you take this $470,000 found money, and you apply it to the project, and then you approve this change order, you still have $144,000 funds left over, which should be enough, give or take, to cover any perceived proposed future costs. We still have to buy furniture for the library, we still have to buy furniture for the main floor, we still have some IT infrastructure to put in there. And if we choose to seriously do any strange renovations to the current lounge upstairs, that will add additional cost as well. So we also hope to bring some additional funds online that we haven't secured yet. We talked, for example, to accessing federal COVID CRC rental funds, which may help for IT costs, and we think there's some energy efficiency monies out there for all the air conditioning that's going to be going into the building, which is sort of the base building stuff that we haven't even touched on yet. Things like AC, ventilation improvements, lighting improvements. We talked a bit about sound deadening in the gymnasium, but also in the library, as well as communication systems throughout. So we'll have, speaker systems that throughout the facility, all included in base price. So the recommendation is that council approve the schematic designs as provided and approve not only the proposed additional costs of $614,584, but also allocation of additional funds for the project.
Thank you very much. It's a sneaky big ask at the end of a long presentation. Deputy Mayor Smith.
Yeah, if it's okay with the chair, I'm just going to move the motion and then.
Please do.
So I move that mayor and council allocate an additional $470,000 of town of Portsmouth's available funds to the CRC renovations project, and that the available funds consists of $250,000 in Government Northwest Territories daycare infrastructure funding, $25,000 of GNWT library infrastructure funding, and $195,000 of GNWT retroactive CPI increase.
That looks like I have a seconder, Councilor Cox. Discussion. Councilor Campbell.
Okay, this is a renovation. What's going to happen when we open up these walls and find more things wrong? Are they still going to come back for more money each time? It just seems like quite a bit of money for what's designed now, and then we don't have very much left to continue to $144,000 for opening up walls and drilling into things on a $4 million project.
I live with an administration and library, but I believe it's the nature of the contract, as it was with the arena, that's sort of the risk that the contractor undertakes in the project price that is provided. But I'm not the contract expert on this, so I can bring out the administration to clarify that, for the contingency amount that is allocated, is that if they find additional deficiencies in the building, is it similar to the arena project, or it sort of is as it is? Or?
Well, on any project, ultimately you're going to bump into three kinds of change order. Okay, you're gonna get unforeseen conditions. So for example, you're doing a water and sewer project, you dig into the ground and you find something you didn't expect to find in there, and it costs extra time or materials to address this unforeseen condition. The other thing you're gonna see is error. You're gonna get change orders where your designer went and designed something, and the contractor goes to build it and it's unbuildable, there's an error, and so now there's a change to deal with it. One of the great things about design build is that we are not liable for designer error. This is the risk that the developer takes in because the designer actually worked for him. Then the third kind of change you're gonna bump into is owner initiated change, right? This is where you say, I want to put a second floor on this. Now, owner initiated change can come at different costs. If it comes early enough, it's just the cost of the additional work that you would have paid the same amount for at any time, right? Before tender, after tender, it's just the cost of putting an extra thing on or whatever. But the later in the process you make that change, the more expensive it gets. If you decide to change the color of the walls and you already bought the paint, then it's more expensive because you've got to return paint, right? If at the very beginning of the project, you say, I want red walls, that's no cost because you're going to paint the walls a certain color, you just order red paint. If he orders the red paint, then you say, I want blue walls, well, he's got to return the red paint, it's going to be a bit more expensive. If you say, I want green walls, and he's already painted the walls blue, then it gets really expensive, right? So right now, we're very early in the design, so any kind of owner-initiated change is just the cost of the extra stuff. So the only thing I think we're concerned about is unforeseen site conditions, where they drill into a wall or they find something is not in the state of repair. And so I think that there's a certain amount of understanding that the contractor in this situation did his homework, inspected the building, knows what to inspect. If there's something really untoward that you wouldn't expect to find in a 20-year-old building, then perhaps there might be some cost in the town. But right now, the assumption is it's something you could expect to see in a 20-year building, you know, squirrels got into the wiring or the walls an extra 3 feet thicker than they expected because it was a low-grade wall. That's his cost of error.
Did I answer your question?
Not really, just $144,000 for a renovation. Whenever you open up a wall, there's always something different or a change order required for something. I don't think that's enough. We're spending I don't know what to say. I want to see the renovation done, but I just don't know what to say. It seems like we don't have much funds remaining. We're just going to keep going back to the trough for more. We need more money to get this job done. That's all it seems like.
The concern is that we don't have enough money allocated for contingency.
We don't have enough money. 144,000. That's what I'm saying. That's on a job this size. That's not very much.
Yeah, understood. Councilor Corbett.
I don't anticipate administration has the immediate answer to this, but I do believe the original contract contained a figure for contingency. And if administration could just clarify what that was at a later date, that would be appreciated.
Smith.
Thank you. So I'm just going to speak broadly, and this is a very exciting day. We're at a time where we have a slightly more than $4 million project in front of us to completely enhance every nook and cranny of our community recreation center, and 70% of it is paid by other people, the federal government and DOWT with their funding. Not only that, we've gone through a round of public consultations where we've asked the community what they would like to see in the facility, and from what I see from what the architects have come back with this concept, almost every request has been incorporated into the design in some kind of way. I can't personally think of anything off the top of my head that I've heard people talking about that isn't included in here. So that is also very exciting because we've been more responsive to the community. I understand Councillor Campbell's concern that the contingency fund has dropped dramatically. What allays my concern is our involvement working directly with its contractor. We went through a design build program through the arena. The arena was on budget and on time. This contractor also built our pool, which was delayed by the lack of procurement of steel, but it was on budget. And I personally worked with a contractor on the renovation of the Portsmouth Ski Club, and again, it was on budget and on time. All three of which have various components of design build within them. I think the contractor has a proven track record in the community. I'm not sure about the GMWT projects, the larger projects of the community jail and the medical center, but I think that my time on council with this contractor in the community, I agree with what you're saying, that you'd like to see a larger section of contingency fund, but in my mind, that contingency fund is dwindled because we are in a position to meet residents' requests for an enhanced facility, and I think that's a risk that I'm willing to take.
Oh, no, I've got nothing. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask if there was any additional questions from other councillors as well. Sorry, Councillor Collins.
Again, not a question, but I do look forward to the consultations this week to see, to hear the feedback from various users and members of the public on their reaction to the drawings as presented. So I think that will, I guess my expectation is that feedback will help alleviate some of the concerns identified by Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I do agree with Councillor Campbell. You know, typically we want to be carrying about a 10% contingency on a project like that. We're not at 10%. Having said that, we don't carry as much risk in a design build project, and we are partway through construction. And as the project advances, you can reduce your contingency because certainties become greater. But having said that, I'm also know that this budget also has to carry furniture and other things that I have yet to put a real price tag on. I'm hoping to do that in the development of the capital plan. And I would like to bring a more sophisticated understanding of what our costs are that would support a smaller contingency. I can't do that right now, other than, you know, the things I know to be outstanding, which are furniture, unless we're trying to a larger curling lounge retrofit. Things I know to be outstanding, furniture and IT should be supported by the remaining money. I also know that we are advancing this change order because the contractor, the developer, needs some certainty to finish the design. If the council doesn't approve the relocation of the washrooms on the second floor or the structural steel on the second floor on the fitness rooms, then that fundamentally changes what the library looks like, and a lot of his design development work can advance. So we're trying to get him those certainties, which is why we're before council now, and not once more information has been put together, because we're trying to support his ability to fast track the project.
So are we gonna, this money now that we're approving, is that for the, give them a change order, more or less? Okay. After this public consultation, we don't even need that public consultation then. Because we're basically telling them to go ahead.
Okay. No, but
It's the process. We move the recommendation forward then to council meeting, which we have the opportunity to finally approve the change order in the next council meeting next Tuesday. In between today and next Tuesday's public consultation. So if we hear from the community that we're totally out to lunch, then we revisit the recommendation next week. This is just a recommendation which goes forward to the regular council meeting. We don't change order issue between now and next Wednesday.
and we have a busy schedule of consultation meetings. Work our way through. Councilor Bolio, any additional questions for administration? Holy. Okay, well, hearing nothing further, the recommendation is before the committee. All those in favor of the recommendation? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to briefing note C. There's a development permit 00121. I'm sure if somebody wants to move a recommendation for that. That's correct. Oh, sorry, administration.
I think you approved the additional funds, but I don't know that you approved the schematic designs as submitted or the change order for 600 and.
Okay, so do we just need to clarify our recommendation? It was just meant to be a single recommendation. Make the recommendation for it. So is this more about looking for, I guess, clear direction from the recommendation itself, just to be reworded, or looking for individual recommendations?
If council can put it all together into one recommendation, but I think right now we have the recommendation to allocate the additional $470,000. But I'm looking for a recommendation to approve the designs and approve the change order to the sum of $614,584.
Okay, so we're just designating those on the back of them. Okay.
Could we bring that forward as a separate recommendation to vote on what we currently did?
I believe that makes sense.
To the amendment and everything.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Are you making, no? So we're looking, administration is looking, we're looking for another recommendation to finish.
So I move that we approve the schematic drawings as presented by the architect and approve, the council approve a change order of $614,584 to the total project.
Thank you. And seconded by Councilor Connors. Discussion?
Do we need the overall, sorry, do we need the overall project amount in the motion? No, just
I believe so. Yeah. Councilor Correct.
I think we stick with it, but a point of order if we haven't voted on the previous motion yet.
No, we did. Okay. It was, you voted unanimously. I believe your hand was up with them. So for the second, the following recommendation, is there further discussion? Here.
Thank you. So just to be clear for, I think, public record and for the vote, these proposed costs that are in the package, it's the 70,000, the 614,000 includes the 281,000 for the seniors room, the design fees, etc. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess just for the public record, it's the $70,000 for daycare, $125,000 for the library, $281,000 for seniors room, $6,500 for the mid-room configuration. There's some administrative design fees in here, of bonding, and administrative and overhead. On top of the original $3.7 million, just under $615,000 in change order. And just to be clear that we're making this recommendation so we can approve it at next week's council meeting. We will be engaging the community over the next week, and if there is substantial feedback that requires revisiting this, we have the opportunity to change or amend that motion at the time.
Okay. Anything further? All those in favor? Excellent, carried. Thank you. And we work in all the CYA. we were. We have a recommendation for we have a briefing note for a development permit. So we wish to remove the recommendation for further discussion. Councillor Correct.
I move that DPA 001-21, submitted by Jordan Serco, operate a home occupation aesthetic business from lot 1612, plan 2730, 35 Cummins Avenue in Portsmouth, be approved.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kissinger. Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation? Carried. Thank you. We had a amendment to the agenda to shuffle item D to item E, which means we had item D. Councillor Corbett requested an item for the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. Just that with the NWT Association of Communities annual general meeting happening, I believe, starting on the 27th and 28th of February, I think we should very quickly decide who will be attending this virtual conference on behalf of the community. In an email earlier, I have indicated that I would be willing to put some time forward to that. And also the issue of bringing forward our proposed resolution regarding the Lower College Board or the Polytechnic Lower College Board of Governors for needed reinstatement of that forward to government.
Okay, is there any other councillors who also wish to express their interest or be able to commit to attending taking the digital Zoom bullet?
Thank you. The NWTAC AGM is from February 25th through to the 27th, and it is virtual. So I would suggest, I mean, we have had pretty full contingent. I'm not sure if it was all of council that went 1 year, but because it's virtual, I think I don't see any reason why as many councillors who wish to attend could attend. I think the more who are able to attend, the better. We won't have any travel fees associated. Mr. Morrison, I'm sorry.
Mr. Morrison.
I think the cost is $100 per attendee, so I mean, if council wishes for that kind of money, we could just solicit anybody who's interested, just contact Katie and get registered. And the money can come out of, I think. Because I'm traveling virtually.
So wonderfully depressing. Okay, anything further on that item then? If there's councillors who wish to express their interest to attend or not, and relook at the, I believe we've already sort of advanced our motions along to draft it, or at least the impression we have to do any further work on that. I guess I'll let you actually speak to that as opposed to heading off the group.
Thank you. There is no other work to be done on that at this time. It will need to be brought forward at the AGM because it's similar. They don't entertain motions that are exactly or very close to ones that have already passed. So it will need to be brought to the floor at the AGM.
Okay. Anything further? All right, well, hearing none, that closes off item D, which actually brings us on to item E, which is our in-camera session for this evening.
I move that council moving camera for the setting of minimum tax sale prices in accordance with the Cities, Towns, and Villages Act, Section 23, 3G.
Thank you. Seconded by Mayor Baker. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll take a brief break to